Welcome to the Anthropology in Business podcast, where you'll learn about the many ways anthropology is applied in business and why business anthropology is one of the most effective lenses for making sense of organizations and consumers. Through conversations with leading anthropologists working in advertising, marketing, consumer behavior, organizational culture, user experience, and many other roles, you'll learn firsthand what it means to do business anthropology and how the work differs from academic anthropology. We will discuss issues like the pace and depth of research in business, our visibility and influence as practitioners, and what we can do to build our brand. We will also focus on the value and impact of our research in business so that we can help business leaders understand why they should be hiring anthropologists. I'm your host, Matt Artz, a business anthropologist specializing in design anthropology and working at the intersection of product management, user experience, and business strategy. Let's get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I'm Matt Artz of the Anthropology and Business podcast. I'm here today with Max Matus. Max has a bachelor's, a master's, as well in anthropology, master's in semiotics, Ph.D. in sociology, so a very well-rounded social scientist. Currently working as a researcher in the Department of Cultural Studies at Colef, which is at the northern border in Tijuana. Also the director of research at Semiosfera, which is a marketing and advertising agency. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe in Mexico City. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about, how you came in anthropology, what you're doing today in anthropology, the state of business anthropology in Mexico. And I think we're both interested in maybe some training related type stuff about how we can train the next generation. So maybe we can get into that. So Max, thanks for coming on. And would you start by telling everybody how you came into anthropology?
Thank you very much, Matt. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. Well, I studied anthropology at the National School of Anthropology in Mexico City. That was around 20 years ago. So at that time, I was curious more about indigenous matters in Mexico. As you know, we have like 68 indigenous groups in Mexico, and I belong to one of those. So I wanted to understand more about multiculturalism. So when I was studying at the National School of Anthropology, I came to consultancy also. So it was unexpected, I have to be honest. Someone just offered me to enter to this world by making a consultancy. And since that, I'm doing this kind of studies, but also I do consultancy for private and public sector. So sometimes I also work for the government, for NGOs, for business, of course.
Got it. And so at what point did you get involved in the consultancy? Was it, during, say, like the master's schooling or after you got your PhD?
Well, actually, it was when I was doing my bachelor. It was in my second year, at the end of the second year, when someone looked after me in order to ask if I could help them to understand the meaning of the colors of the oil for the car. For me, that was very, very weird. Why are you asking me that? But anyways, I accept the challenge. It was a consultancy. The name, it was Cuentan. So I did ethnography, and I went to research that. It was with young people, and it was very interesting to understand that even in the color of the oil of the cars, that there was such a big difference, words, meaning, and so forth. So that was my first consultancy for private sector. And then I did some more work for them, little works, let's say. But when I was finishing my master, also in anthropology, then I decided to open my own consultancy. The name of this consultancy was In Situ. We're talking about 2005 around. Mm-hmm. And I opened it with another colleagues, anthropologists as well. And we opened it in Mexico City. It was a kind of a boutique consultancy. We were at that time 5 people. And it was hard for us at the beginning to get our own clients. So our clients actually were bigger consultancies. So we were providing anthropology services for big consultancies. And we were working with some 5 consultancies, I guess. And it was an interesting business model, but it was also kind of demanding because, of course, every consultancy has its own way of doing research, way of deliver insights, and also there is also matters concerning to let's say private issues from each consultancy. Mm-hmm. So we were working like this for some 2-3 years. And at the end, when we were becoming bigger and bigger, let's say in making this kind of consultancies, we didn't understood how to really deal with internal matters. So we didn't were able to grow our team to deliver quality research on the right time. Let's say it was starting to get more difficult for all of us. Mm-hmm. And at least at a certain point, we decide, okay, if we are going to do that, we are going to do it right. Otherwise, better not, because we have to be very responsible with that. And we decide to stop the consultancy, first of all, because I also wanted to go to make a Ph.D. Mm-hmm. And other friends also wanted to continue studying. And other friends went to another consultancies. So that was my first consultancy. It was very interesting, but very demanding.
Got it. So a few interesting things in there. One, I mean, you're kind of fortunate or lucky that you got offered that job while studying for your bachelor's. It's a great opportunity. And I'm wondering, at that time, did you have any sense of really how to operate a business, or was it what did you have to learn to kind of ramp up for that?
Well, when I opened my first consultancy, I didn't have an idea about how to operate a business. I have to be honest with that. So it was a great responsibility. None of us had this ability. And in the administration, of course, it was the most problematic part. The administration for the field research, I still remember, because we were working with lots of people going to the field, making research, also focus group and so forth. And at that time, of course, we used to give some kind of gift to people that was working with us, and you had to include that also in the budget. So it was kind of difficult. There was one person that it was trying to specialize in that, but it was very hard. This was the main part. Let's say soft abilities, that we mm-hmm. don't get when we study anthropology. Of course, there are no courses for that. But also another problem was how to deliver very quality results and how to present them. Because since we were academics, let's say, our way to deliver findings was very boring. So we had to learn somehow how to be more precise, to use design as a tool to present findings. There was like someone who was trying to specialize in that. And when we understood that actually, let's say, the more design we were using in the presentations, it was easier to communicate, let's say, few words and more diagrams and things like that, we were getting into the point. But it was also another ability that we had to learn at that time.
Good. So yeah, that's helpful. Maybe, we can come back maybe towards the end to talk about a little of that extra training that maybe anthropologists should be getting. To stick on your education for a moment, though. So you're going through your anthropological schooling, you're starting your consultancy, you're getting clients. I find it interesting that you were working with other consultancies, larger consultancies. So how did you first pitch it to them? How did you sell the value to those consultancies?
Well, actually, it was not that difficult because at that time, consultancies were looking for our services. So we just had to go and knock the door and say, hello, we are in situ specialized anthropologists. That was the full name. specialized anthropology. So we are offering our services as researchers, market researchers, and it was not that difficult to get clients, but of course the first projects were very little. And it's because some 20 years ago, we started to make anthropological research for markets in Mexico. So that's the reason. It was like the boom of this kind of research. There were not so many providers. As I told you before, the main, let's say, difficult that we were facing at that time was to understand the own culture of the consultancies that we were working with. Mm-hmm. And because we were not in business before. So even the language, what is a brief, what is a debrief, what is like, little by little, we were somehow learning in the field. Mm-hmm. And that was like the most challenging thing. Of course, there was someone who was the main vendor. It was a woman from Chile, and she had the ability to talk, Everyone had a different ability. At that time, I was already, let's say, the head of the research because I was the more academic one. And there was someone else that it was trying to sell, and someone that it was very good for doing report in the field. So we specialized in this way.
Got it. And so what made you, earlier you said you still wanted to get a Ph.D., but what made you get the MA in semiotics and the Ph.D. in sociology as opposed to just staying in the kind of classic anthropology track?
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, it was because of this experience. When I was working with some clients, they were always interested about semiotics somehow, about the meaning. They didn't want to research only practices. They wanted to understand the deep meanings behind those practices. And they were always asking, like, for the methodologies, and they were always asking like how to somehow manage science, how to communicate better to clients. So I understood that the only thing that I knew about that was the most classic anthropology, let's say the structuralism, Lévi-Strauss, and this kind of anthropology like French semiotics. So I understood that I had to learn more about that. And I went to Estonia. There is a program, it's one of the only programs in the world that they have cultural semiotics, and which is more, it's also kind of a structural semiotics, but also more applied, more pragmatical. So that's the reason because I went to study semiotics. And actually, for me, it was very interesting to do this master. And then that's the reason because the next consultancy that I opened was an integration of anthropology and semiotics. So the next consultancy that I opened is Semiosfera. And about the PhD,
No, go on.
No, and about the PhD, this PhD on sociology that I did in the Netherlands, it was more close to anthropology, let's say. It was more applied anthropology. The head of this PhD was Norman Long, who was an anthropologist from Manchester, and he opened this program in the Netherlands. And in Mexico, it was well known, this project, because of the applied side of anthropology that they were doing, but more in the field, more in the countryside, more working with peasants. So I wanted to understand also this kind of anthropology, but for the development. Mm-hmm. Let's say it was not for business, but it was more anthropology of development. And it was also, very important in my career. And that's the reason because after studying this PhD, I started to make also consultancy for the government, for the public sector, for fishery and peasants.
Got it. And so, you said roughly 20 years ago was kind of like a boom in Mexico for this kind of research. So Tell me about it then and maybe now. How has it changed? Is there more of an appetite for that kind of research or less, or is it different?
I think it's very different. At that time, people really didn't understood what was anthropology and what was good for and what was ethnography. So there was a lot of expectation. And I think that things change very fast. And so nowadays, you can find a lot of little consultancies that are offering anthropological services for business and ethnography services, but let's say that they are not really professional consultancies, and they are not growing as fast as the market needs a more, let's say, professional anthropology. One of the first and most important anthropological and design consultancies at that time was another in situ with M at the end. Mm-hmm. And this consultancy was opened by two designers that studied in United States. They are Mexicans, and then they started to work with anthropologists, and they create this consultancy. And this consultancy, I think, is like the school of how to do business anthropology in Mexico, because lots of people from National School of Anthropology and other schools of design in Mexico started to work in this consultancy, and this consultancy grew very fast somehow. And until nowadays, actually, they were bought by Accenture 2 years ago.
Yeah, that's great.
So this is like the school for making this kind of consultancy in Mexico. And so what I see nowadays is that really some consultancies, they think that they already know how to do ethnography, and they think that to do ethnography is just to go to talk to people. The problem is that when we started to face the pandemic, then they didn't really know how to do ethnography, but in the, let's say, ethnography. And they started to face another kind of problems. And because, of course, to do ethnography is not only to talk to people, but it's richer than that. So what I want to say with that is that there are many consultancies in Mexico that they say that they are offering anthropological consultancy, but from my side of view, it's not really like this. And also that's the reason because me and other colleagues are interested in trying to help students to understand what is to do business anthropology or consultancy since they are in the bachelor. Let's say not to wait until you are dealing with going into the work market, but since the very beginning, if you want to do that, then you have to know since you are studying a bachelor how to do it, and you have to start to professionalize in that. That's what we think. Yeah.
For sure, yeah. Yeah, and I definitely want to get to that. But to maybe stay on your current work and the state of business anthropology in Mexico. So your agency is in Mexico City, I believe, and you're doing, your other work up in Tijuana. And so is there any differences, from, Mexico City to Tijuana? Like, do you see business anthropology, being sort of very different across Mexico?
Yeah, most of the consultancies, business anthropology consultancies are in Mexico City and Guadalajara. And in the north of Mexico, there are very few consultancies and no anthropological consultancies. There are qualitative consultancies. And so that's the main difference. So we are a very centralized country in this way. When we get clients, normally we get it via our office in Mexico City. And when they ask us somehow to do the research, they are always choosing the same cities almost all the time, like Mexico City, Guadalajara, Monterrey, and if they want to risk a little bit, they choose Merida, for example. So the main cities, and we are of course always trying to talk to them and to try to open their views, because this is a very narrow, let's say, view from our point of view, and I think this is also related because we don't have many anthropological programs in the north of the country, for example. So you don't have specialized people for that. So also our academia is very centralized, and that is another problem for us. So when we are trying to get help for making our research, when we are, for example, making research in another cities like Chihuahua or Guerrero or Veracruz, we are always trying to go first, like our contacts in the anthropological schools. We contact with some teachers and we ask them, do you know someone who has already some experience in that, someone who is making a thesis in this kind of topics? And that is the way that we are growing, let's say, our network. And of course, we have always the CVs and everything with us. And when we need a very specialized profile, then we are looking for it. But it's not easy to find a really, let's say, a specialized anthropologist in Mexico for this kind of consultancy. I mean, outside Mexico City.
Got it. And so how do you, even within then, Mexico City, how do you think your customers are coming to you? Like from an inbound perspective, are they actually searching for anthropological research, or are they searching, for something tangential that then they find you, or is it mostly coming through recommendations, referrals?
No, well, we have a team that is, of course, trying to sell our services. So this team approach in a very traditional way. They are like sending mails, calling to business, to the areas of, let's say, depending, but it can be marketing areas or research areas, innovation areas. They make the appointment. So they make the presentation, and one of the my colleague, for example, Jan Corona, who is the CEO of the consultancy, he is trying to go to make the presentations with the sellers. And when it's a consultancy that is also specialized in semiotics, then I try sometimes to be with them. As I told you, they are very interested in semiotics, as they were before interested in anthropology. But the main problem is that they don't really believe still until nowadays in the semiotic product. So we are still selling more anthropology with a twist of semiotics at the end of the day. So trying to show our services, because this is our point of differentiation, or we are trying to make that at least. Mm-hmm. So it's a very, very, very traditional way. This is when it's for business. When it's for public sector, well, there are public convocatories that we have to apply to, and this is another kind of market. And I'm more specialized in that, as I told you, like with the fishery sector, we were working a lot, but this is a totally different consultancy. I want also to point here that it's not easy nowadays to sell anthropological consultancy in Mexico, because people is asking for more, to do more in less time. So as you know, anthropology wants or likes to make a very deep field research, but we don't have time for that, and people don't want to pay for that. Mm-hmm. So when we work for the public sector, we can make a better field research. When we do research for business, for private sector, they don't understand that 1 day of research is very few. But for them, this is like, what? Why not an interview? So that's one of the main problems that we are facing until nowadays. And because there are more consultancies that are asking for less money, that's the reason, because we all have to adapt. So I was talking to a friend of a consultancy in UK, and he was pointing the same. Before, our clients were asking for research, let's say, in 1-2 months, and now they want to have ready the research in 1-2 weeks. What can you do that? What can you do in 2 weeks? It's very few time.
So how are you trying to make that the most productive?
Well,
the most valuable?
To using, big teams, if we have money enough, of course. When we make research in different cities of the country, we prefer, instead of looking for anthropologists outside Mexico City, we make the team in Mexico City and we send all the people to those other cities. So we together make the research in the office in Mexico City. Let's say we centralize everything to be sure that everything is going to be done in the right way. So that's the way that we are facing that. But of course, we are also using a lot new technologies, and we are using a lot of semiotics when the budget is not so big. So we are doing a lot of research on the net, more with images, more with written discourses. So in this way, we are dealing with that. But yeah, but of course, because of the pandemic, because of the COVID, everybody is adapting also to this other way to do research. Yeah.
So presumably before COVID, or maybe there's been a few of these jobs during, but in the case of where it's multi-research or multi-site projects, what are you doing then when you bring that data back? Are you collaborating to analyze it and find the insights in it? Or is that then going to to a particular person or a smaller team, or is it a group?
Yeah, of course. It goes to a smaller team. But we are asking the anthropologists to deliver all the information in a very specific and strict format. Just in a normal PowerPoint, but you have to ask those questions and no more, and provide 3-5 pictures for this question and no more. We're trying to set limits also, because otherwise, if we send 20 anthropologists all around Mexico, and we need to have their field notes in a very, very precise and homogenic way. So that's the reason because we are doing that. And even though it's fun because we set rules, and I don't know if we anthropologists are like that, but they don't always follow the rules. So we are always dealing with that. Either they are providing way more information or way less, or they are responding another question. So, but anyways, this is the first. So there's someone that is in charge of that, so that is sure that we are getting everything in the same format at the same time and everything. Once it's done, we'll start the process of systematization. There is someone else who is in charge of that. And when we have the information and when it's already systematized, if I am able, I go to Mexico City to supervise the analysis of the information in a direct way. And I mostly do that because of my work here at Colef. I mostly do that on the weekends. So I take a fly and I spend there 2 days with the team, like being sure that the insights that we get from the data are the right ones. But of course, there is not always a possibility to do that. So if there is not a possibility, one member of my team comes to Tijuana and we do it here. And then we're also using a lot of new technologies in order to try to organize that. But of course, I'm not the only one who is able to do that. My colleague Ian and another people who has been growing with us in this consultancy, or who has been working with us in another consultancies, are always helping us a lot if we happen to have like different projects at the same time.
Got it. So I have 2 follow-up questions based on what you just said. One's on the technology, but I'll come back to that second. The first one is really on sort of maybe the need to balance structure versus unstructured. So, you said you try to give them, some guidelines of what to go out and do. You said ask these questions no more. And I can appreciate from the business perspective the need to be able to kind of bring that together in a structured way and do it on a tight timeline and under budget. But it also seems like it may miss something then, right? Because obviously the unstructured areas is oftentimes where we uncover something we didn't expect. And so how do you find a balance there?
Yeah, I forgot to say that after the ethnographers deliver the field notes in these formats, we normally make a face-to-face interview with them to be sure that we understand everything that they are delivering and to go deeper in if we have some questions. So that is the first thing. And of course, the head of the field research team is always with us when we are doing the analysis. And if we understand that we are missing something, then we call this researcher and we are trying to get what is missed. So of course we are always asking also for lots of photos, videos when it's possible, all that. But this is like information that we have just as a backup. When if we need it, then we go and analyze it. But let's say that the deliverable that we are asking them is very structured. Yes, indeed, in order to be able to compare and to be sure that everybody is giving the information that we need to respond to questions.
Got it. And so you also said, thanks for sharing that. And you said that you've been using a bunch of new technology, and presumably that's for maybe data capture, potentially for data analysis as well. And I would assume some of that was a result of COVID, but some of it also may just be a result of the changing landscape of business and the tools that we have. So is there anything, particular that you've found interesting to and from a technology perspective that you worked in your practice?
Well, these new boards that to work online, like Mural, for example, I love them. Those are helping us a lot because they are giving us the opportunity to somehow materialize, let's say, in the virtual world, one very common way of working in the consultancy. So you can work with those post-its, virtual post-its, for example. You can make your diagrams, you can connect ideas, and it's an environment that is alive, that is growing, and that's what I like of it, and it's very easy to teach to other people. And so we are also already asking the people that we make research with to, when we start a project, for example, to go into the Mural and to start sharing. Whenever they want, they can start sharing and they start talking. If they want, they can share photos, thoughts, and in this way, we are already making also a report with them. So in this way, we are also making them feel that they are part of the research. So this is one of the most, let's say, technologies, the most friendly technologies that I've found lately, sure. and that I'm working with. Other technologies are more boring, like Atlas T and those kind of things that are more for systematized information. But no, these murals and things like that, I like it a lot.
Got it. So earlier you said when you talked about your early forays into consulting, and when you were working with those other consultancies, you were talking about the difficulty of presenting the results and the need to kind of use design to convey ideas, in an impactful, clear, kind of concise way. And so I'm wondering, how has your practice changed from that time till today? What are you doing different today to help people see the value that you're producing, and how are you communicating the insights to your customers?
Well, let's say that the importance of working with a professional designer. I think that is what I learned when I was with Insitum, and not only for let's say to make things look beautiful, but to think in a from a design perspective. So this is like the one of the main, let's say, things that we are trying to do when we are nowadays delivering results. It's not always possible again because some clients don't want that. Some clients they even say don't pay so much attention in the design. We just want to have very fast answers for those little questions. Sometimes it's like this, but other times when there is a good budget, we can include one designer into the team, anthropological team, and since the very beginning we are even analyzing the results, the field research results, with this designer. The designer is with us in the analysis, in the process of analyzing data. And the designer is already trying to develop some models with us in order to understand the data and to be sure that we are making a good model of explanation. So for me, those are the most rich projects when we have the opportunity to do that, because you can clearly see the results at the end of the day. When there was a designer working with an anthropologist, the results from my side of view, they grow in quality and it's very the power of the explanation, the power of the models that you are able to construct is very different. Because, as I said, we are not trained for that as an anthropologist. So here in Mexico, I insist, thanks to In Situ, we talk, anthropologists and designers, we talk a lot, or we used to talk a lot, and until nowadays, I still like to work a lot with designers. And from that experience, I also started to work in the academic field with an area that I call it techno-anthropology. And in techno-anthropology, we do more basic research or applied research, but to the public area. And we are always working among anthropologists, designers, engineers, but always this very holistic perspective.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I mean, as somebody who, basically within the business anthropology space is primarily specialized in design anthropology, I'm accustomed to co-creating and agree with you that I think that is really the best way to approach it. But building on that, I would ask, do you ever involve your clients in the process of analysis?
Well, we try to do it somehow. Nowadays, they are not really open to that. Before, when we started to sell anthropology, they were very excited and very happy because, they were like somehow outside of their workspace, and it was very funny at the beginning because some of them even were dressing like Indiana Jones, with shorts and everything. They didn't really understood what we were doing, no? They were sometimes they were not really helping when we were going to the field. They were like kind of tough sometimes, and so it was at the beginning. It was very very interesting experience, and you could see how they compromised to go to the field. But then little by little things started to change, and nowadays, even though you gave the opportunity to clients to go with you to the field, I don't know why they are not going with us anymore. And in the analysis, we are also open to bring some clients to our office, for example, or to invite if we are working virtually. But they are not involving with us. They are only asking for more partial deliverables, to be sure that we are going in the right direction. I think this happens because some areas in the business, in the industry, are getting specialized also. They are opening their own, let's say, consultancy department inside, And when they are doing that, they of course, the amount of the work that they have is a lot. So they are only being like a broker, looking for some consultancies outside. And when they find one that they like how they work, They only ask to make the research, and that's it. So we are not working as before with other, like, let's say, human resources areas. We're not working with those more traditional areas. Nowadays, we're working with research areas inside of business. And I think that's one of the reasons because things has changed lately.
Got it. Great. So to sort of pivot and maybe work towards kind of closing some of these ideas up. So you mentioned design is something that's not taught. You mentioned when you started your business that you weren't really prepared. You had no business training. When you mentioned mural and moving the stickies around, of course, it invokes a lot of thoughts today about design thinking, which is often asked about within a corporate setting, even if it may or may not produce, the value that we possibly could from using a maybe more holistic approach. Nonetheless, whether it's design or business skills or the language of business or something like design thinking, there are lots of things we potentially could be providing training on to the next generation of business anthropologists that would help them fit into organizations better. No, you're interested in that as well. You've kind of alluded to it a few times. So what do you think are the key gaps today?
Definitely soft abilities, for example, as we were talking before, how to administrate your own business. That's something very important. We don't have, at least in Mexico, National School of Anthropology, you never get a class like this. You never get also a class about business or design anthropology. We only have applied anthropology, but more in a traditional way, more this kind of anthropology that was used to be done by anthropologists working in a very close way with the government, and more like helping indigenous people to somehow to be part of the nation, let's say. So it's a very old-fashioned anthropology. Mm-hmm. And actually, we're facing with this problem in some anthropology schools and programs in Mexico because some of them believe that this is not very professional, what we are doing. So anyways, we are pushing, and I myself, when possible, I do lessons in anthropology, but it's not compulsory courses, but optional courses. So I've been teaching there 3 times. And when I teach there, I also take students to the consultancies, and they like a lot. And I think that this works a lot for them because, let's say, in the last lesson that I provide, I took them to 5 consultancies, and they understood also how different each consultancy is, because each consultancy, of course, it has its own culture of working. And so we were asking the consultancies to share a project and to explain how they were doing the project. So after this experience, many of my students started to work in those consultancies. So it was unexpected. Let's say that I helped them to make the contact with the consultancies because they didn't know how to approach to the consultancy. They were afraid somehow. So they got jobs. I had 10 students at that time, and at least 6 students are working until nowadays in consultancy. So this is also to take to the students, let's say, to a living lab, Mm-hmm. And also we did once a rally for a week. We asked students of anthropology from all around Mexico to join us in the National School of Anthropology. There were like 80 anthropologists, and we were working with other consultancies, with other friends that are doing this kind of work. And we give 2 days of conferences, also about our experience, what we're doing, and so forth. And the other 2 days was a kind of a safari or a rally, or I don't know how you want to call it, in order to try to solve some problems, to answer some questions related to public services in this area that we were working with. So we divide these 80 anthropologists in 3 teams, and we were like helping them, the people who had more experience, to do their research. And we make this like a challenge. And at the last day, the teams presented the results, and there were like some even public servants somehow to evaluating the work. And it was a funny way to teach them in a practical way, in a living lab way, what means to do this kind of anthropology. So we only did it once, but it was a very, very good experience, and I think that we have to do it more often. And also, of course, you asked for what we have to teach them: administration, practical things, how to approach to business. But as we said already, to be very, very formal, to be very good at delivering good insights, and to pay a lot of attention in the quality of your work and the presentation of your work also. Mm-hmm. That is key, I think. And in order to help specialized anthropologists in Mexico also, we are bringing the Global Business Anthropology Conference in 2 years to Mexico. A colleague, Carmen Bueno, a very well-known anthropologist from Ibero, she was like the contact with this organization, and she made the team of anthropologists that we are working in this project. So we are very happy to announce that and to start working on that. So I think that this event is going to help a lot to talk about the new challenges of anthropologists working in business.
Yeah, sounds great. Yeah, I'm hoping, I plan to come, assuming there's no issues with COVID, but looking forward to it. I think it's going to be great down there. You know, the video that's up on the businessanthro.com site is obviously it's great, and it looks like it would be a nice event. So really curious to see how that all comes together, and certainly happy to kind of help push it here on the podcast and make others aware of it. So, Max, thanks for sharing all that. Is there anything else that, aside from the Global Business Anthropology Summit, that you might want to make anybody aware of? Any things that you're, any little initiatives that you're involved in, any talks or anything at all that's coming up that you think others should know?
Well, thank you very much, Matt. It was really nice to talk to you. And well, I just want to be part of this growing community and to develop new ways to professionalize anthropology. And I think that the podcast is a very good way, and that there are a lot of initiatives going on around, and I'm very happy for that. There are many conferences nowadays, so I think that we are doing good, but we can do it better by sharing knowledge. Thank you very much. Certainly.
Yeah, thanks. And where should everybody find you if they're interested in getting in touch?
Twitter is in Samaxo, XAMAXO. This is my Twitter. And of course, LinkedIn, and my mail is like my name. Let's say is maximino.matus@gmail.com, and also Matus, Matus, at Colef.mx. So also, if you want more information about me, you can find me at the Colef webpage and at Semiosfera webpage.
Great. Thanks for sharing that, and thanks for taking the time today. It was a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you very much, Matt.
Take care, Max. Bye. Thank you for listening to the Anthropology in Business podcast. To learn everything you need to break into business anthropology and why business anthropology is one of the best lenses for contributing to business success, visit my website at mattartz.me, where I cover many topics related to business anthropology and beyond. There you will find all the podcast episodes, blogs, and news. Please like, share, and subscribe. See you next time.